Canadian Broadcasting Centre. I'm David Colin, and I'll moderate the debate between these four major party leaders. To my right, Green Party leader Mike Schreiner and Progressive Conservative leader Doug Ford. To my left, Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie and NDP leader Marit Stiles. Hello to all of you.
Good evening.
We've given the leaders time limits tonight, and I'll make sure that they stick to them. They've agreed to the format and the rules, but they do not know the questions in advance. Their speaking order has been determined by a draw. And so let's get right into it. Our first question is on the issue of leadership. You each have 1 minute. I will turn to Doug Ford first. What makes you the right leader to respond to the tariff threat?
Well, this election, folks, is all about leadership. It's who do you believe is going to protect your family, protect your businesses, protect jobs, and protect your community. It's about who you believe is going to protect Ontario. We've seen what President Trump's tariffs will do, and we're going to see what President Trump is going to be like for the next 4 years. If these tariffs go through, no matter if it's next month, next year, I can tell you one thing, they'll devastate the economy. But I can promise you, we will get through it. We'll get through it together. We'll be more united than ever before because we already have a base on our economy. We have a strong base. We're going to expand our economy, diversify our trade, bring companies in from all over the world, just like we've done for 7 years. Over $70 billion of investment have come to Ontario, 850,000 jobs. And I can tell you, I will fight like I've never fought before to protect the people of Ontario.
All right, Doug Ford, that is your time. We'll turn to Marit Stiles. What makes you the right leader to respond to the tariff threat?
Well, thank you, and hello, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. I'm Marit Stiles, and my promise to you, first of all, is as Premier, I'm going to be on your side, fighting rising costs. When I moved to Ontario more than 30 years ago, where I grew up in Newfoundland, Ontario was a place of opportunity, but not today. After 7 years of Doug Ford and the Conservatives, the cost of everything is through the roof. There's been bad deals, waste, and of course, lots of promises, but nothing really delivered. As we face this big threat from Donald Trump, something we've never faced quite to this extent before, Doug Ford quit his job. Well, I'm applying for that job. And my promise to you is this: we're going to fight the rising costs. We're going to hire doctors and fix the healthcare crisis. We're going to build the affordable housing that people need. And we are going to make sure we protect and defend every job in every industry. That's my commitment to you.
Marit Stiles, thank you very much. Bonnie Crombie, same question to you. What makes you the right leader to deal with the tariff threat?
Thank you, David, and honored to be here tonight. So for me, leadership is about vision. It's also about priorities. And it's also about having integrity. It's about stepping up when you need to see something done. My mother always told me, Bonnie, if you don't like what you see, then change it. So that's why I'm here tonight running to be your Premier. When I look around Ontario today, I can't recognize it. After 7 years, 2.5 million people don't have a family doctor. People can't pay their groceries and their rent in the same month. 1 million people are using a food bank. That's Ontario today, very sadly, and we need to change it. And we need a leader who will not only protect jobs, but a leader who will get you a family doctor. And that's what Ontario Liberals will do. We'll get the basics right. I'll ensure you have a family doctor. I'm the only one on this platform that will cut your taxes. We're going to cut income taxes. We're going to take the HST off home heating and build homes that are affordable. That's what you get when you vote Ontario Liberals.
All right, Bonnie Crombie, that is time. I'll turn now to Mike Schreiner. Again, the question is about the tariff threat. What makes you the right leader to deal with that?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, David, for the question. For me, leadership is about putting people before self. I would not abandon my job at a time when we should be coming together to show strength through unity to push back against these tariff threats. As someone who grew up in a rural community, I know what it feels like to have a government abandon your community. It's just not fair in Ontario right now that we have a government wasting $2.2 billion on a spa in downtown Toronto, or tens of billions on a tunnel under the 401, or millions ripping up bike lanes in Toronto when so many people across this province are looking just how do I afford a home or find a doctor or not have my rural hospital closed. Mr. Ford is handing out $200 checks to millionaires and billionaires at a time when we need to be investing in helping people afford homes, fix health care, and make life more affordable for the people of this province. That's the kind of leadership I would bring.
All right, Mike Schreiner, thank you very much. Many serious subjects on our agenda tonight, but we also want to help you, the voter, understand the person behind the politician. So we have some quick personal questions. I'll just ask the candidates 30 seconds each to those leaders. I'll start with Bonnie Crombie. What was your first job and what did it teach you?
Oh, great. So I got a job when I was 14. I lied about my age. I was a cashier at Woolco and I did a lot of retail at the mall and jean shops. And then I worked in a home decor store for many years. So I always had a part-time job. I wanted to contribute to the family income and I wanted to be able to, pay for my own expenses. I think it's so important that our young people, if they can find a job today, go out and work and contribute.
Bonnie Crombie, I'll turn to Marit Stiles. Your first job, what it taught you?
Well, NDP, first job babysitting, but I'll go to the second job, which was I was a swimming instructor when I was from the time I was about 15 onward, and I worked every summer doing that and on the weekends, and mostly I taught little kids, really, really little kids. I learned that parents can have really strong opinions about their kids and how they should be learning swimming lessons. I learned the responsibility of taking care of others, and I got to bring home money to my family, which was welcome and helped to contribute to going to university.
All right, Marit Stiles, thanks very much. I'll turn to Doug Ford. Your first job and what it taught you.
Well, my very, very first job was when I was in grade 2, delivering the Globe and Mail newspaper in the freezing cold weather at 5 in the morning. But let's say the real job, when I was about 16 years old, I went over to Canada Packers on St. Clair, worked there for 4 years. I'll never forget, I made $12.49 an hour, and back then that was big money. I brought home a paycheck, I remember $310, because you're only allowed to work 24 hours, but man, did we work. We slugged that beef day in, day out, and loaded up these 40-foot trailers, but it was one of the great jobs when you're a teenager.
Doug Ford, thank you. Mike Schreiner, your first job, what it taught you.
Yeah, I grew up on a farm, and my first job was feeding cattle, driving a tractor, and driving a combine, probably at an age that my parents would admit was far too young. But they didn't pay me for that, because that was my contribution to the family farm. So my first job was actually, my father loaned me the money to buy a lawnmower. And I went out and mowed people's yards and brought some money home for myself. And I learned how to be an entrepreneur. And I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, and I'm really proud of what I learned as a kid from my parents.
All right, Mike Schreiner, thank you. Our upcoming topics do have some ground rules, and that is to say that if one of the leaders here makes a claim about one of their opponents or another party or their government or a previous party leader in their answer, we're going to give that other person extra uninterrupted time to respond. So this means we sort of encourage you to talk about your plan. And with that, we turn to a very important topic, healthcare. You have 1 minute each. Bonnie Crombie, the first question to you. 2.5 million people in this province do not have a family doctor. We see the strain on emergency rooms. You all have different proposals for a fix. What timeline? When can people expect to have a dedicated primary care?
Yeah. Within 4 years, David, is the answer. So I talk to people across the province and they tell me they're afraid to get sick. They're really worried that the worst thing that can happen to them is to have to need a family doctor because they know they might not have one available. That's not the kind of Ontario that I believe in. The kind where 2.5 million people don't have a family doctor, 11,000 are waiting for surgery or care or treatment, or people in the north have to drive 4 or 5 hours to see their family doctor. And that's because Doug Ford doesn't believe in our public health care system. One of the things that make us so proud to be Canadian. It's time for a change. A vote for Ontario's Liberals is a vote for family doctors. And how am I going to do that? By paying them better, bringing more of them, bringing in those internationally trained doctors. They could be your children who are trained in the US or the UK. Let's bring them back home by doubling the residency spaces, by paying our nurses and our PSWs a living wage. But none of that can happen while Doug Ford is Premier. So it's time for a change.
All right, Bonnie Crombie, that is your time. Because you mentioned Doug Ford twice, I'll give him 30 seconds to respond to those claims before we move further.
Well, first of all, there's no government in the history of this country that's invested more, 30% more than the previous government. That's over $30 billion. And we ended up going out there, attracting 15,000 new doctors, 100,000 new nurses, 30,000 nursing students in colleges, and universities. But I can tell you one thing, you can't do it without a strong economy. The foundation of our healthcare is a strong economy, and unfortunately, all three of them fail in our economy.
All right, Doug Ford, I'll come back to you. Mike Schreiner, the question, of course, is how soon under your plan will people out there have dedicated primary care?
Within a four-year mandate, David. It's not fair in Ontario right now that 2.5 million people don't have access to a family doctor. Rural hospitals are closing their services, and we have 30,000 young people on a wait list to access mental health services. I was in Chesley, Ontario, and I met a man who said, thankfully, this local hospital saved my life. But if I have a stroke today, in the evening or the weekend, it won't save my life because it's only open from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's what happens when you underinvest in healthcare. And that's exactly why the Ontario Greens have a plan to make sure everyone has a family doctor, primary healthcare provider, stop the privatization of healthcare, invest in rural hospitals, and ensure that the people who provide care for us, nurses and frontline healthcare workers, are paid a fair wage. And we will also expand mental health services because mental health is health.
Mike Schreiner, thanks very much. We'll turn to Marit Stiles on the question, when under your plan will people out there who don't have a family doctor right now have one?
Right. Thanks for the question. And the quick answer to that is our healthcare guarantee, which is that everybody will have one within 4 years. Having said that, my pledge is also that within the first 100 days, we're going to remove the paperwork and the administrative burden from the desks of our family doctors. Look, family doctors that I talk to, what they want to do is see patients, and they're overwhelmed with that paperwork, that burden. So we're going to make sure we get that off their desks by providing additional support, connecting them to family health teams. And I'd say this as well to folks watching out there. You know, 10,000 people in Sault Ste. Marie lost their doctors overnight, not that long ago. We have emergency rooms closed. An average wait time in an emergency room in Hamilton is 22 hours. Let that sink in, right? We cannot afford to continue on the road that we're on. So I'm also going to recruit and train and make life better for nurses so that we can keep them in our hospitals, treat them with respect, not take them to court or freeze their wages.
All right, Marit Stiles, I'll turn to Doug Ford on the core question, how soon under your plan will everyone have a dedicated primary care provider?
Well, what I said earlier, we've invested over 30% more than the previous government, and that's over $30 billion. What we've done, and I don't care about political stripes, as you know, I'll work with anyone. We brought on Dr. Jane Philpott, former Liberal health minister, and we're spending over $1.8 billion to connect every single person. We're leading the country right now at 90% of people connected to primary care, but that's not good enough. We're going to hit 100% with the help of Dr. Jane Philpott, well-renowned right across the country. But we've also built, as I said, over 50 new hospital sites or additions, $50 billion. And we're going to continue to invest into the doctors, over 15,000 people, over 3,500 new beds, and another 3,000 on top of that. But you can't do this without the foundation, and that's the economy. And each of them fail on the economy. It's very simple.
All right, that is time. Doug Ford, thank you very much. We're going to turn now to our first debate where anyone can jump in if you want to talk about what anyone else has said. I will step in if it turns into everyone just speaking over each other. And of course, we reserve the right, don't want to, but we reserve the right to mute microphones if the audience just can't understand what's being said here. Our subject continues to be healthcare. I'll turn to Mike Schreiner. And the question is a family doctor for everyone realistic and affordable?
It absolutely is. But it won't be if Ontario continues to be dead last in per capita healthcare spending in the entire country. It would take an additional $12 billion just to get us up to the average. That's why you have rural hospitals closing their services. That's why 2.5 million people don't have a doctor. We need to make the investments that the Ford government has failed to make.
I would just say this, you know, in answer to your question, David, like we cannot afford not to get this right. We cannot afford not to have family doctors for everyone. It's essential and it's crucial. But let's be clear, the healthcare crisis that we are in right now, the hall hallway healthcare crisis was invented by the previous Liberal government, but Doug Ford and his government have poured gasoline all over it. We have a crisis in our province right now. He can talk about how much he's spent on healthcare, but the reality is, talk to any Ontarian about the state of our healthcare crisis right now. It's terrible. We cannot afford not to invest in healthcare right now and make sure people have family doctors, but also nurses in our hospitals right now, respected.
By your own admission, Doug, you put $1.8 billion into your plan for healthcare. You put more into the spa at Ontario Place at $2.1 billion. Yeah, you might build hospitals, but you're not recruiting doctors, you're not recruiting nurses, and you're not giving them the operating costs. I'd like you to look into the camera, and I'd like you to tell the people at home who lost loved ones while they were on the wait list what you did over the past 7 years to fix our healthcare system, because it's broken. We're in crisis, and you're bragging about what you've done. It's been an abysmal failure.
Doug Ford?
Well, Bonnie, what I will tell you, there's a reason why Dr. Jane Philpott, a liberal minister, comes to our team. It's very simple, because she sees the vision. She sees that we're building healthcare. She sees that, again, backlog surgeries. You know something? We have less backlog surgeries per capita than anyone in the entire country. We've bought over 49 MRI machines to spread out across the entire province.
11,000 people waited. 11,000 people died waiting for one of those scans.
Said he would
you know something? We will never.
It's gotten twice as worse.
We will never.
Can you explain to people?
We got 10 seconds.
We'll use a credit card. We'll use your OHIP card. That's what we're going to do.
Private medicine. That's what you want to take us to. Private medicine, Doug.
That's what we're going to do.
With that, we've run out of time in this segment. We're going to continue with another important subject, and that is the cost of living. Once again, you have 1 minute to answer. Mike Schreiner, I'll start with you this time. Groceries, rent, and mortgage payments have all gone up for many people, and yet also for many people, salaries have not kept up. What will you do to help ease what is for many people a daily struggle?
Yeah, times are tough right now. I hear it every day. And unfortunately, in Ontario right now, the rich insiders are getting richer.
Right.
And the rest of us are just struggling to get by. Rent. Nobody on a full-time minimum wage can afford rent anywhere in Ontario. Food bank use is at an all-time high, up 78% just in the last 2 years. And it's not fair that Mr. Ford has handed out $200 checks to millionaires and billionaires like Galen Weston, the guy gouging you at the grocery store, when so many people can't afford to even pay for groceries. That's why the Ontario Greens are saying we will lower taxes for low and middle income earners, saving them $1,700 a year and asking the wealthiest to pay a bit more. We'll end gouging at the grocery stores, and we'll actually start building rental homes that you can afford.
Okay, because you've mentioned Doug Ford's name, he has an opportunity for 30 seconds to respond.
Well, you know, Mike and the other two folks on the stage, this is where we fundamentally disagree. See, Mike looks at that as that $200, and so do my other two colleagues. It's their money. That's what they believe. It is the government's money. Well, let me tell you, folks, it's your money. That's what you paid into. And when we saw more revenue come up to the coffers, we believe that it goes back to the people to stimulate the economy, to go out and you might be able to do something you might otherwise not be able to do. We believe in giving back taxes.
All right, that is time.
You guys believe in keep charging taxes.
Doug Ford, thank you very much. I'll turn to Marit Stiles on the original question. What will you do to help alleviate the cost of living?
Well, first of all, you mentioned rent. Rent in Ontario is up 38%, right? Let that sink in. 38% across the province on average since 2018. That's amazing. And it's not just in cities like Toronto, it's in every community across this province we are seeing that. I have a plan to not only bring back rent control, but also keep more money in your pocket by bringing in a grocery rebate program. And I think it's really essential because people need that now. What that means is that every month you're going to get a check back that covers some of the costs, money back in your pocket, and you can spend that on food. And we're also going to fix the problem of price gouging by all of these grocery CEOs with a consumer watchdog. It's about time we did that. And one thing I can tell you is you're going to get about a check for about $120 for a family of 4 back every month. And let me tell you, I am not going to be giving a $200 check to Galen Weston.
Right. Marit Stiles, thanks very much. I'll turn back to Doug Ford to have your core response to the question, what will you do to help ease the cost of living?
Well, this is where we fundamentally disagree. Fundamentally, you know, we're the only government in the history of Ontario that's never raised taxes. We've seen more revenues come up because we've created the climate and the conditions for companies to invest. Now, these three did bring back the gas tax, and I know they've admitted it, that they're going to bring it back. They'd bring back the one fare that saves people $1,800. They'd bring back the tolls on the 412 and 418. They'd bring back the tolls on the 407 that we just ended up getting rid of. And the difference is, I don't believe in taxing people, and I will never take money out of your pockets. They believe it's their money. There's never been a tax they don't like or a toll they don't want to hike. That's the difference between myself and my three folks on the stage here.
Okay, we do have a debate coming up momentarily to talk about this very issue, but right now I'll turn to Bonnie Crombie on this core issue of bringing down cost of living.
Let me just ask you at home, is your life more affordable today than it was 7 years ago? I bet the answer to that is no, because I hear from people everywhere I go. They can't afford to even buy their groceries and pay their rent in the same month. And it's a really cold February, and they're using a lot of money paying for heating bills. I'm not okay with that, people in food banks. After 7 years of promises, we got nothing. We got no action. You were promised a tax cut, but you never got it. Here's what I'll do with Ontario Liberals. I'm going to cut your taxes. Yes, your income tax, and you'll pay 22% less on the first $75,000. I'll also take the HST off your home heating and your hydro bills, and I will build homes that are more affordable because we're going to take off those hidden taxes. And there will be no tax on carbon. You can take my word for it. We will double the ODSP for people living with disabilities. We'll also phase in rent controls, and we're going to look at auto insurance premiums because they're out of check.
Bonnie Crombie, thanks very much. I'll turn to Marit Stiles as we turn to the open debate portion of this. And I'll kick things off just with a question. Do you believe a tax cut is the best way to make people's lives more affordable?
No, as I said, our plan is to bring in a grocery rebate program because we think that, like, look, since 2018, no question, groceries have gone out through the roof, right? So we have an opportunity, but we also have a real offer for Ontarians, right? That will actually put money in your pocket so that you can afford food again. But look, you know, more than that, we've got to stop the price gouging by these grocery giants. And under Doug Ford and the Conservatives, we have seen again and again that they favor those big companies over regular people.
Okay, I can see Mike Schreiner wants to get in.
I want to ask a question really directed to Doug Ford. The three of us have all said we would double ODSP rates.
Yes.
People are living in legislated poverty. And I'm wondering if Mr. Ford thinks it's okay in a province as wealthy as Ontario that people would be forced to live in legislated poverty on $1,300 a month when average market rent in this province is $1,600 a month and over $2,000 in Toronto. How can we sleep at night knowing that people with disabilities can't even afford to pay the bills?
Bonnie Crombie, I can see you want to get in. Doug Ford, did you want to respond to that?
Well, I'll respond quickly. Under ODSP, we've actually increased it based on the rate of inflation. It's gone up since 2022, 17%. That's what we've done. But you can't pay people on ODSP if you don't have an economy. And all you three believe in is simple. Just tax the people to death. Tax companies to death. We saw what you did.
And no, it's my opportunity to get in.
7 years ago.
No, I think it's my opportunity.
I walked into a bankrupt province because you lost 300,000 jobs. You tax businesses. You tax people.
Hey, Doug, you promised 7 years. Doug, you promised 7 years ago that you would cut our taxes.
I'll tell you what I've done.
You didn't get it done, Doug. You didn't cut our taxes. I am the only leader on this platform today that is committed to cutting taxes.
I've committed to cutting taxes. I've committed to cutting taxes on low and middle income families.
With my plan, people will take home $1,150 every year, not a one-time $200 check, Doug, which is great this month. You can pay your rent, you can buy groceries, but what about next month? What does that $200 check do for people next month?
We have 45 seconds remaining.
Well, if I can get a word in edgewise here, but I almost fell off the stage here, David, when Bonnie Crombie said she'll cut taxes. When she was mayor, She raised taxes every year, raised the
tax
garbage
increases were
tax,
the same as
raised
yours.
the water tax,
Same as
raised
yours
property
in
taxes
Toronto.
every year. Matter of fact, at one time, Mississauga was well run until Bonnie came along.
Doug Ford,
just jump
I
in
know
here for a
Marit
second?
Stiles wants to
I
get
I'd
back
just like
in.
to ask another
Goodness.
question, Doug. I
know,
feel like,
thank-
we've talked a lot about, you're talking about your little things, but listen, $2.2 billion that you're spending right now to subsidize a luxury spa in downtown Toronto, that's $400 per household in Ontario. Do you think you could maybe cancel that so that people in Ontario won't be subsidizing a luxury spa?
Do I get this one?
You get the we've run out of
Can I
time,
ask
but
you one
I'll give
thing?
you the chance to
We've
respond.
cut over $10,000 of taxes. Why did any of you
Where?
not vote for it? Because you don't believe in cutting taxes. Thank God we have Mayor Carolyn Parrish
I will have
in
to,
Mississauga.
I'll have to
She's
stop it
done
there.
more.
I'll have to stop it there.
Dave,
I'll have
I
to
was
stop it there. Unfortunately, we are out of time just for this particular segment, but we have many more to come, including public safety. You have 1 minute each for your answer. And a reminder, if you make a claim in this section about one of your opponents, in your answer, we do have to give that person uninterrupted time to respond. And now I turn to Doug Ford with a question about youth crime. Teenagers are being arrested in smash and grab robberies, in car theft, and in some cases, murder. What will you do to deal with youth crime?
Well, first of all, we led the way on bail reform. I don't believe that no matter if it's a 17-year-old or a 22-year-old, that should get a slap on the wrist when they kick in the door and put a gun to someone's head or, unfortunately, murder someone. I don't believe in that. I believe in throwing them in jail. I believe in hiring tough judges and justices of the peace because we've seen this happen, and nothing frustrates our great police officers more than this. They arrest someone, throw them in the cruiser, and the guy in the back is saying, I'll be out before your end of your shift, and guess what? He gets out because of the weak policies that Bonnie Crombie and the Liberals, federal Liberals, it's catch and release. Let little Johnny out 10 times on bail to recommit the exact same crimes. I don't believe in that. I believe in making sure they stay in jail and there's consequences when you start terrorizing neighborhoods. And that's what we're seeing in Toronto and the GTA. We're investing in our police like they've never seen before.
All right, Doug Ford, thank you very much. He has said your name, Bonnie Crombie, so I'll give you 30 seconds to respond to that, and then 60 seconds on the question of what you'll do to respond to
Let me also say how proud I am of my record in the city of Mississauga and people electing me with 78% of the vote because I created jobs. I brought in investment. I set us up for growth and economic development. And I'm very proud of that. But you know what? Something in Ontario has changed. People just don't feel safe anymore. They lock their doors. They put their cars inside their garages because we see carjackings and break-and-enters and home invasions like we've never seen before in the past 7 years. Under this government, things have gotten out of control. Yes, we will be hard on crime, but I will also tackle the causes of crime because we need to invest more in our youth and get them invested into programs.
And on the core question?
Oh, it's me, my
Yeah,
turn?
yeah, no, that, I think we've covered it there. So we can shift on now to Mike Schreiner on this question around...
Don't I get 30 seconds?
You did get 30 seconds.
Oh,
yeah.
it was my turn?
I thought you were finished.
No,
if you're not done,
not at all.
Please go ahead.
Not at all. Let me say that things have really changed in Ontario. It just doesn't feel safe here anymore whatsoever. Violent crime is on the increase. We see carjackings and break-and-enters and people breaking into your home to steal your car keys so they can steal your car. An increase of 350%. That's crazy. People are afraid to ride the subway. Families are afraid to walk through the park because they're going to step on needles. So despite all the talk you're hearing, things are actually a lot worse. If you want safer streets, you'll have to vote for an Ontario Liberal government. We'll crack down on crime, but we're also going to invest in the causes of crime, like specialized courts to throw the book at repeat offenders. We're going to be really tough on repeat offenders, including those criminals and those carjackers. We need to do this. We can't sit back. You know, David, I hope to be a grandma very soon. I had 2 kids get married this summer, and I don't want my grandchildren living in Doug Ford's Ontario.
Bonnie Crombie, thank you very much. Mike Schreiner, your opportunity to respond to the question around youth crime.
Yeah, Mr. Ford talks about bail reform. That's a federal issue. I would suggest he look in the mirror at the fact that 80% of people in provincial jails right now in Ontario are awaiting trial. One of the reasons people who are accused of crimes are getting off is because there's so many delays in the Ontario courts that they get out because of that. And now this Mr. Ford wants to make it even worse by criminalizing people who are experiencing homelessness. We need to invest in housing people, not throwing them in jail. We need to invest in treating people with mental health and addictions challenges, not threatening to throw them in jail. People need public services. That's what a caring Ontario looks like. That's what fighting for fairness looks like. Ontario Greens will put care over crime.
That is time. I will turn to Doug Ford because his record has been challenged on 2 occasions. I'll give you 30 seconds.
Well, thank you so much. As the Liberals were closing jails, we're building jails. As the Liberals and NDP were getting rid of our police, we're hiring more police, actually over 2,000 more police officers through our colleges, and we're paying for their education. Yes, I believe in making sure we hold people accountable. You know, I find it ironic that you, Bonnie, are saying about the police. You said on tape that you're scared of the police. And as for you, Marit, your own members want to defund the police.
All right.
Like, who wants to defund the police except the NDP?
And that
Only
is-
your group.
Do we get
That is
30
time.
seconds again?
Not in this
seconds?
response. It's,
Okay.
it's tricky keeping it all straightened out. But Marit Stiles, this is your opportunity to respond to, what was our original question? Youth crime.
Youth crime. Yeah, thank you for that, David. And I will start talking to youth and about youth because that was the question. And look, I mean, really, if we want to address a rise in youth crime, we need to invest in our schools, make sure they are full of caring, qualified adults to teach and provide lots of youth programs and community support. But look, I mean, there's no question. We know this, that everyone deserves to feel safe. And a lot of people are seeing a rise in theft, like auto theft in our communities. People are worried for their safety. I know, I hear it a lot. On this issue, my priority is always going to be taking care of people. And that means, as I just mentioned, taking care of young people. It also means ensuring that people with addictions get the health care support they need, people who are living in encampments and homeless get housing. But look, we need to fix our court system. And right now, it is so backlogged that it means that dangerous people are falling through the cracks, and many others who deserve their day in court aren't getting it. We need to fix that, and that's an issue that the provincial government can address right now.
And that is time. You're all slinging things at each other, so it seems like a perfect opportunity to have an open debate. You can all jump in, but I'll start with Bonnie Crombie on this instance. Violent crimes up. What do we do?
You know what I think is really important? That we have a dedicated bail court for repeat offenders, so they are dealt with harshly and right away. This is the problem, the catch and release, and this is something that Doug has had 7 years to deal with and has done nothing about. We also need a plan for people who are of addictions, not just use a notwithstanding clause to get them off the streets. There's no plan on where to put them and give them the treatment that they need.
We haven't really talked about here at all are victims. And you know, as I was saying in my response earlier, what we're seeing right now is because of the backlog in our courts, we're seeing the dangerous folks get out. Innocent folks actually can end up behind bars for far too long, but cases are being thrown out under the Conservative government of Doug Ford. And of course, many others are not getting the justice that they deserve, including, by the way, victims of gender-based violence. So, you know, I've talked about this a number of times, but I want to make sure we remember that there are victims involved here too. This government cut back on the Victims' Compensation Fund. They have failed to declare intimate partner violence an epidemic. And again, you know, he always wants to talk about throwing people in jail. I want to talk about how we actually prevent that in the first place, as well as making sure that people actually get their day in court, which you're not seeing under the current
We've only got about a minute left.
One of the ways we prevent people from being thrown in jail in Ontario right now, with the government saying they want to actually criminalize homelessness, it's just horrible. Like, we're better than this. We need to build a caring Ontario. It's a crisis of caring if the government's going to say we're going to criminalize homelessness. Let's house people. 93% of the deeply affordable homes built in Ontario were built before 1995. 3 decades of underinvestment. That's why we have 81,000 people
what we
experiencing
really
homelessness.
need are some
I do want to give Doug
Government
Ford an
has
opportunity
said
to get in
no
here.
to solving that, and now they say they want to criminalize homelessness. Come on, we're
Doug
better
Ford?
than this.
Well, we've invested into our police like no other. $75 million into guns and gangs. We're buying more helicopters. We're getting more boots on the ground. We've hired more judges, over
people
25
That
judges.
crime is up.
We've hired more
350%
prosecutors.
up.
We're getting the backlog. But you know what the problem is? Do you know why there's a little bit of a backlog? Because your catch and release policies, you don't believe in mandatory sentences. None of them believe in mandatory sentences.
No, that's actually
They
not
catch
true. That's not
and
what we
release,
said.
and they're back on the street and they're kicking down another door. I don't want those people kicking down doors.
criminalizing
I
our-
want those
Honestly,
people
Doug.
in jail.
Doug,
That's
you've
what
been
I want
in
to
power
do.
for 7 years. You have to take
7 years. You haven't done anything. I want to say
Talk to the police.
I'd like to.
Very simple.
I'd like to
Folks,
know what
when you
our
see
plan
a police
is.
officer, please go up to him and say,
Thank you.
Has the PC government supported you?
Oh, my goodness.
Or has the previous
All right,
government
Meanwhile,
we
you
do
cut
have to
3
wrap, or we
bills
won't
a
get
year.
through any of our other
I know I have
subjects.
the support
So I'm
of
going
the
to keep
police,
moving on
and I
here.
have your backs too.
We need a
right.
plan for homeless people. They are our family members. It
Okay,
could have been
we're
my
moving on. We're
father.
moving on. Thank you very much. I'm glad to see everybody's as passionate as they are. I'm the referee. I got to keep us on schedule here. We are looking for a quick answer in this next segment, a maximum of 30 seconds, and a yes or no will do. Mike Schreiner, I will turn to you. Would your government build housing on the Greenbelt?
No, we will unlock housing that people can afford in the communities they know and love, instead of opening the Greenbelt for development, which would only benefit wealthy, well-connected insiders. That's why we have a housing crisis in Ontario. The priorities are wrong right now.
Bonnie Crombie, would you build housing on the Greenbelt?
Absolutely no. When I was chair of Big City Mayors, we made it very clear that we could accommodate the housing that was necessary, all within the municipal boundaries that had existed. The mayors have a plan, and they would have stuck to it. Doug Ford told his donors that he would open up the Greenbelt, then he promised us he wouldn't, and then he went ahead and did it anyways. And of course, we pressured him to do the right thing and pull back.
All right. Marit Stiles, the question is, would your government ever build housing on the Greenbelt?
Absolutely not. Look, Doug Ford and the Conservatives decided to open up the Greenbelt, even though he said he wasn't going to do that. I am so happy and proud to have stood up against that move and pushed them back on their heels, and we won alongside farmers and everybody else. But look, our farmland is not up for grabs. It is not up for grabs. We have plenty of other opportunities and space within urban boundaries to build the housing we need. What we're missing is a government that has the political will to build the truly deeply affordable housing that Ontarians deserve.
Right, that is time. Marit Stiles, thank you. Doug Ford, I'll turn to you. Would your government build housing on the Greenbelt?
No, and I think it was pretty clear. I said I was, and then I wasn't, and I went ahead and did it. But in saying that, let's
give him an opportunity to
You know
respond.
something, I apologize to the people. Unlike any of you, when you do something, you don't want to apologize. I apologize to the people. We're moving forward. We're building homes. I find it very rich that Bonnie Crombie say she builds homes. She built the least amount of homes in the entire province. Just compare to the new mayor. The new mayor's done more. Carolyn Parrish has done more in 7 months than you did in 10 years. That's
All right.
fact.
We'll leave it there. Doug Ford, thank you very much. Now, all of the leaders here have made many pledges and policy announcements. Perhaps you've heard them over the last few weeks. Here are some of them.
We're going to build the 401 Express Tunnel. It will be the largest tunnel in the entire world.
Well, first of all, we would cancel Doug Ford's $2.2 billion subsidy to a foreign-owned mega spa.
The Ontario NDP will end encampments by supporting people and helping them find a home to live in.
We have a plan that will cut personal income taxes, that will cut small business taxes, and that will eliminate the HST off home heating and hydro.
Okay, you've heard the promises. Now let's talk about the plan, and we'll do that with Global News' Colin DeMello. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you, David.
Colin, as many people will know, is the president of the Queen's Park Press Gallery, so we're glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, and hello to all of the candidates. Good to be with you today. I'm here to ask you some questions on specific policies that you have been presenting to voters. You will have limited time, just 1 minute to answer, so we ask you to please talk about your policies and not that of your rivals.
After each answer, another one of you will have the opportunity to ask a follow-up question and then debate back and forth. We've randomly selected who will be asking that follow-up.
We will begin with Progressive Conservative leader Doug Ford. You have promised to build a tunnel under Highway 401, but you have not done a feasibility study or said what it will cost. Why should taxpayers give you a blank check?
Well, we know all 400 series highways are going to be maxed out in 10 years. You know, as the folks on the stage here, they don't believe in building highways. They said they're against the 413. They're against the Bradford bypass. They're against the tunnel. You know, they're against everything to build. So I guess my question to all three of them is, where's the traffic going to go? You know, Mike, you say, let's put it on the 407. What are you going to do in 10 years when it's maxed out? You say, put the trucks on there. Talk to the Trucking Association. They don't want it. We're going to invest in transportation, and the only way we can invest in transportation is by having a strong economy. And all three of you have failed the economy. You don't believe in creating new jobs, because to create new jobs, you have to have tax incentives. You have to put money back into the businesses' pockets to invest in their people, into their technology, into infrastructure, and put money back into people's pockets. That's the difference, fundamental difference between myself creating jobs and them chasing 300,000 jobs out of our province.
And that is time. Doug Ford, thank you very much. This is where Colin and I get to pass off the who gets to ask a question. And Bonnie Crombie, you now have the power to ask a follow-up question of Doug Ford.
Thank you, Doug. Doug, I have one question for you and one question only. After 7 years of lies, why should anyone trust a word you say?
Well, first of all, action speaks louder than words, and people have seen us spend over $200 billion on infrastructure, no matter if it's $50 billion worth of hospitals or $28 billion in building roads and highways, or $70
Doug, you
billion
put us
in building
into an extra
transit.
$100 billion
See,
of debt. How does any one government spend $100 billion and pay 2.5 million people still don't have a family doctor?
That's the difference between us.
Doug, a fantasy tunnel. How dumb is that, Doug? 40-year project.
In infrastructure.
Okay, let's give him a chance to answer the
I
actual
believe
question.
in building infrastructure. Under the Liberals and NDP, there was nothing built. There was no subways. We're building the largest subway extension in all of North America. We're building highways and roads and bridges because we know one thing. There's $56 billion that's costing our economy every single year.
Doug, this tunnel,
Bonnie Crombie an opportunity to respond.
And we're going to get people
this tunnel
from
is
point
a
A to point
fantasy.
B.
This is a fantasy project.
So is our subway,
it is a
right?
40-year
Back in
project. It won't be built in my lifetime. It will not alleviate any congestion. It will bankrupt the province at $150 billion. There are alternatives. Why don't you invest in the alternatives? Why don't you invest more in public transit? There's an alternative highway parallel. The 427 could be leveraged. Truck-only lanes on the 407. Doug, this is a fantasy that would bankrupt our province. No one believes you. You make other promises, and you don't get it done, Doug.
That marks time for us. I'll turn back to Colin now.
Thank you very much. Our next question is to Green Party leader Mike Schreiner. So you have promised to scrap the current plans to redevelop Ontario Place. What would you propose to do with that land instead?
Well, first of all, I think it is a huge mistake and an insult to the people of Ontario that the government is subsidizing a foreign-owned spa at the tune of $2.2 billion, privatizing public space. Ontario Place is for the people of Ontario. It's public space that should be publicly available, and unfortunately, the current government has torn down all the trees, and now they want to subsidize it. Imagine what an insult it is and how unfair it is to people across the province saying, I can't afford a home. Hospitals are closing in my community. We can't get access to a family doctor. And this government is subsidizing a foreign-owned spa at the tune of $2.2 billion. That is not what the people of Ontario want. They deserve better. They deserve fairness. That's exactly what the Ontario Greens are fighting for.
Mike Schreiner, thank you. I'll turn now to Doug Ford. You get a follow-up question. I would ask that you begin it with a question.
Well, first of all, you know, we're building a world-class destination. We're going to see over 5 to 6 million people go there. And under the Liberals and NDP and the Greens, they let it deteriorate. It was just, you know, dandelions coming up and everything else. and we're going to build an amphitheater that's going to attract millions of people. We're going to have 50 acres of public realm that you have to be more informed, Mike, because you didn't even know that.
Question?
50 acres. We're going to build a destination, the most popular destination in the entire province. And all these people, ironically, they're going to show up. We're going to build a new science center. They're all showing up.
That represents
Mark my
time
words.
there. Well, you can. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Was there a question?
There was no question there, folks. Let's be clear. There was no question there because nobody can defend why you would waste $2.2 billion subsidizing a foreign-owned spa. If it's such a great destination, why are Ontario taxpayers on the hook for this? When our kids are learning in overcrowded classrooms, people can't afford homes, rural hospitals are closing, people can't find a doctor, and you're wasting $2.2 billion on this mega spa in downtown Toronto. It's the same kind of waste that the tens of billions that you're spending on this fantasy tunnel that will create traffic chaos in Toronto. I want to build things, but I want to build things that make sense for the people of Ontario, like homes they can afford.
I do want to give Doug Ford an opportunity to respond.
Well, first of all, let's address this tunnel, and it's going to be one of the largest tunnels in the world.
Let's address it.
And I know, I understand.
Ford
You believe in bike lanes and riding bikes and planting trees. I get it, and you're good at that. So, but the problem is, you won't be able to afford the trees because the economy will go down the tube with all three of you. We're going to continue building transit, building infrastructure, getting people from point A to point B, and we're going to gain $56 billion on the economy instead of losing the economy.
Why don't we do that?
They're all
Why don't
great
we build
talkers,
homes
but
close
none
to
of
where
them
people
have
work?
solutions.
All right, and that is time. I'll turn back now to Colin.
We have another question for NDP Leader Marit Stiles. You have promised to end encampments. It is estimated that more than 80,000 Ontarians were homeless last year. What will your party do to end homelessness?
Well, first of all, I mean, the answer to homelessness is building homes. So the first thing that we announced as part of our big platform was Homes Ontario, which is where we get the government back in the business of finally building affordable, permanently affordable housing again. And you know, we had programs like that up until the mid-90s when the Liberals in Ottawa and here, the Conservatives here in Ontario canceled all of that. We'd be way ahead right now if we still had those programs, but we don't because they canceled it. We need to get back in the business of building those permanently affordable homes. And really crucial in all of that is 60,000, so the 1.5 million homes, but 60,000 of those are supportive housing. And that's really important for a lot of the folks that we're talking about in our encampments right now. And let's be clear, there are encampments, there are homeless tent encampments in every corner of this province, in every community under this premier and his government. So we have to build supportive housing with wraparound support for people.
All right. And with that, we'll turn to Mike Schreiner with a follow-up question, please.
Yeah, I certainly support Ms. Stiles' plan to end encampments. We actually have to get back to building deeply affordable homes in this province. 93% were built before 1995. The question I have for you, though, is do we need to create a whole other government bureaucracy to do that? I've talked to nonprofit and co-op builders who have said, why don't you just flow money to us and we'll get it built? That would be more efficient and effective to achieve our shared objective.
I'm happy to respond to that, Mike, and thank you for your support. Look, every other province except Ontario has an organization that manages this and that coordinates it, and that's what we will need. And that means absolutely working with builders, working with nonprofits, working with municipalities. And I'll say this, our plan is built on the premise as well that we are going to provide a strong provincial partner. We're going to offer up provincial land where we can, right, to make sure we build that housing. But it's that partnership that's crucial, and I know you see it, and people out there see it all the time, that there's community organizations ready to go that want to build this housing, and yet no true provincial partner. So we need to show leadership, and at the provincial level, the NDP is ready to go, right? Again, every other province is doing this. We're not, and we're so far behind. And I would add as well that, if we're going to move forward quickly enough, we have to get going right away. I'm going to start this within the first 100 days that we form government. And that means as well getting Ontario building again, because right now, I would just add one other thing, which is that Ontario, and you know this as well, of course, is like building less housing than anywhere else in the country right now.
Sorry,
our housing
we only have
starts
20
are
seconds
down
left.
to
Go ahead.
50s levels.
I agree with you. We need to get going right away. This is exactly why. Let's not create another bureaucracy to do it. We have a ministry in place. Let's just flow the money to the nonprofits and co-ops and permanent supportive builders so they can get going away.
All right, that is time.
Fair enough.
Mike Schreiner, thank you very much.
Our next question is for Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie. Your party has promised to cut middle-income taxes for middle-income earners, but your plan doesn't actually cut taxes for anyone earning less than $50,000. What will you do to help lower-income Ontarians?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I really thank you for that because people are hurting right now. You know, I'm in the grocery store and I see moms picking up meat and putting it back down and going to the checkout aisle and holding their breath. So I thought, what can we do to make life more affordable for people? Yes, we're going to cut small business taxes, but we're going to cut income taxes for people earning $75,000 or less. And we're going to take the HST off home heating and hydro, and we're going to build homes that are more affordable. But for other folks entirely, we're doubling the ODSP for people who are living with disabilities. I believe in phased-in rent controls over a period of time. And by the way, we're going to look at auto insurance premiums because they're out of control. So overall, my goal is to cut your taxes, to grow the economy, much like I did in Mississauga, and I'm so proud of my record in Mississauga, attracting investment, creating jobs, setting us up for growth, and getting elected by large margins, because I think the people of Mississauga had a lot of confidence in what I did to stimulate the economy and build jobs.
All right, thank you very much, Bonnie Crombie. Marit Stiles, you get the follow-up question to Bonnie Crombie.
Well, I'm going to take a slightly different tact. I heard a few things there that I think the Liberal leader needs to read some of her own policy on this. But, you know, I wanted to go after another thing, because what I'm finding increasingly as I go around the province is that people are paying out of pocket for health care, for actually things that we, you know, as Canadians believe should be absolutely free. You should be able to access healthcare when and where you need it, not out of pocket. And I was really shocked to see that the Liberal leader, that her party has received $25,000 in donations from private healthcare insiders.
Do you have a question?
And I'd like to know how she can stand here and say she's going to save healthcare, which, by the way, was created. Hallway Healthcare was created under the previous Liberal government, when she's receiving those kinds of donations from private healthcare providers.
Okay, we'll get.
Yeah, I think the NDP leader is envious of my fundraising record to date. I will say that the NDP thinks that money grows on trees. You know, you just can't promise everything to everyone all the time. Okay. That's just not a serious plan. It's not a serious plan. When I was the mayor of Mississauga, I had to balance my budget. I never ran a deficit. I did that for the past 10 years. I balanced my books for 10 years, just like people have to do at home. They have to balance their budgets at home. They know that they have to save in bad times. That's the difference between me and you.
I think I need to ask this question a little bit more clearly, maybe. You said that you are going to fix the healthcare crisis, that a previous Liberal government, I will argue, started the whole hallway healthcare crisis, right? You don't take responsibility for that, but you also will not take responsibility for the fact that you have collected $25,000 from private healthcare insiders at a time when we are seeing people literally having to pay out of pocket under Doug Ford's government for healthcare. You know, Ontarians are very clear. They do not want to head in that direction.
Certainly, we follow the rules to the T. Absolutely. And
so
I have a plan that will invest $3 billion, not the 1.8 that the Premier is going to do.
How do we know it's not going to go
$3 billion to ensure that everyone in Ontario has a family doctor. That is my pledge.
That is time. Colin, thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Good to see you. Now, we asked some voters what issues they have not been hearing leaders talk about during the election campaign.
Car theft, crime on the streets, the drugs, and the guns. Never used to be like that.
The waiting time at the emergency, it's like hours and hours. I'm talking from my own experience.
I think they need to talk about healthcare, and I think they need to talk about education so badly.
A lot of people are suffering here. Right now there is a situation with the food bank. That shouldn't be happening. This is Canada.
Well, for this next segment, Siobhan Morris joins us. She is the Queen's Park Bureau Chief for CTV News. Siobhan, hello.
Hello, thank you, David. Hello, candidates. I want to ask you some questions about things that are not in your platform. You'll have 1 minute to give us your position. There is no open debate in this section. We will begin with Marit Stiles. You have vocally criticized the government's closure of supervised drug consumption sites, but you've given no details about how you will respond to the addictions crisis. What is your plan?
Well, first of all, look, as I've traveled around the province, without question, addiction and mental health care crisis is rife. It is in every community, in every corner of this province, and it has certainly gotten much worse in the last 7 years. You go to Sudbury, for example, you see that corner with all the white crosses that was built by a woman who lost her son Miles to an overdose. The answer to addiction is healthcare. Right? That means that you do not take resources out of communities without actually putting back more and better resources. And that's not what we've seen under Doug Ford and the Conservative government. We saw them take away supports and not replace them. And I like the healthcare hub idea. That came from communities. But it is a drop in the bucket what Doug Ford and the Conservatives are proposing. It will not address the addiction crisis. When somebody needs help, they need it right away, not 2 months later, not a year later. They need it immediately.
All right, Marit Stiles, thank you.
The next question is for Doug Ford. You promised in 2018 to end hallway health care, but overcrowding in hospitals now is worse than it was then. Why should voters believe that you will fix the problem now?
Because we've invested more than any other government. We've invested over $33 billion, over a 30% increase. We're actually building medical schools for the first time in some areas over 100 years. As the Liberals got rid of medical school seats, we're adding hundreds and hundreds. We've registered over 15,000 doctors, 100,000 nurses. And the way we do this, the foundation of healthcare, is very simple. You have a strong economy. That's why we've been able to invest in building more medical schools, having more doctors. We're paying for their tuition, by the way. All doctors, if you stay in primary care, you get your tuition paid for. We're paying for all the nurses right across the province for their education that none of these parties have ever done. Nurse practitioners, we're taking care of them on their education as well. We're doing everything we can to build the system, along with bringing Dr. Jane Philpott in, that will connect every single person to a primary caregiver.
All right. Doug Ford, thank you very much. Siobhan.
A question now for Mike Schreiner. For 10 years, you've been vowing to get rid of Catholic school boards, merge them with public boards. Your new platform doesn't mention that. Why not?
Yeah, because right now, we have a crisis in our public education system. The Ford government has cut per pupil funding for education by $1,500. The priority for people right now is to shore up our public education system. And that means supporting both our public and Catholic boards to hire more teachers, educational assistants, special educators, and just caring adults, social workers, so our students have the supports they need. I think coming out of the disruptions from the pandemic, we need to shore up our public education system. And unfortunately, the current government has failed to do that. Ontario Greens are committed to reversing the $1,500 per student cut. We will invest in clearing the repair backlog, and we will ensure that we can lower class sizes because we would hire caring adults in our schools.
All right, Mike Schreiner, thank you. Siobhan.
And we turn now to Bonnie Crombie. You have opposed building new highways in the GTA, but you haven't talked really about how you would address the issue of traffic congestion. What is your plan to tackle gridlock?
So certainly there are a lot of alternatives, and I will say this government has not acted on any of them. We need to invest more in our public transit systems. Look at the GO train lines. London, town of London, has been promised a GO train line. It wasn't delivered. All-day two-way GO train service on the Milton line. It was promised again. It was never delivered. We're talking about $150 billion fantasy tunnels. Rather than utilizing existing resources like leveraging the 427 or truck-only lanes on the 407, there's a lot more public infrastructure that can be built, public transit that we need to invest in. Right across the province, look at the highway highways in the north, twinning the 2+1 lanes in 11 and 17, adding the extra 68 kilometers on Highway 69 in the north, because those roads are so treacherous and we rely on them. But here in the GTA, invest more in public transit to move people around. Here is where the needs are. People need to get to their jobs, and they need to get to their appointments and to their school.
Bonnie Crombie, thank you very much. And Siobhan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Siobhan.
Thanks, Siobhan.
Thanks, Siobhan.
Ontario, of course, is a beautiful, vast, and varied province with unlimited options for leisure activities. As we step away briefly from policy to the personal, we're looking for an answer in 15 seconds or less. This is a tense room right now, I don't mind telling you, so we're just going with a little bit of something to break that tension. I'm going to start with Doug Ford and ask you a question I'll ask everyone here. If you have the weekend off from work, where do you go in this province?
I never stop working. I return calls. I have a cottage that I think I saw twice last year for 5 hours to cut the grass and came home. That's what I'm consumed about. I really am. I'm wake up in the morning early, 5:30, 6 o'clock, and return calls, and people know it across the province. From midnight,
Okay,
I'll return
that is,
calls. So I enjoy working.
All right, Doug Ford, thank you. Mike Schreiner, same question. You got a weekend off from work, where do you go in this province?
Yeah, I work really hard, David, but I also spend a lot of time with my family. And my family and I like to go hiking in and around Guelph. We have amazing trails in Guelph. I love to hike along the Niagara Escarpment. I think it's really important to spend time with my family and nature.
All right, Mike Schreiner, I'll turn to Bonnie Crombie. You get a weekend off, where do you go?
Well, goodness, I love nature and I love spending time with my family as well. And my family are very physically fit and we're a little competitive about it. So my destination is going to be Thunder Bay because they have great rock climbing in Thunder Bay and I can't wait to go out and see it. And some of the other things we'll do is, of course, pickleball because it's so popular right now. I love pickleball.
And that is time. Marit Stiles, a turn to you finally. Get a weekend off. Where do you go in Ontario?
Well, I mean, we're all going to say we work harder than anybody else. So, there's that. But I will say I'm a swimmer and I just love swimming in Ontario lakes. You give me a lake, I will swim there. I have yet, though I will say honestly, ever swum in Lake Superior. So that is my next try, although I hear it's pretty cold. So I'm going to wait until the summer, obviously, and I'm going to swim a lot.
It's a great place to swim.
It is,
I'll tell you, it is. I've done it, it's great.
Maybe we'll all meet up there.
We'll all meet there.
Let's turn back to policy with a look at education. Another reminder that if anyone here makes a claim about one of their opponents in their answer, then that person gets extra uninterrupted time to respond. You get 1 minute each to respond to this question, and I'll start with Marit Stiles. Colleges across this province are chopping programs, and they're doing this in the wake of successive provincial governments saying to them, go and get revenue from international students. We know the bottom's fallen out of that. A lot of that money is gone. So how do you fix what has become a crisis for many colleges?
Oh, well, thanks for the question. And as I travel around Ontario, I got to tell you, I'm met almost everywhere I go by workers and students at our colleges, at our universities, who are very, very deeply worried. Communities that depend on the economy of those institutions as well, what that's going to mean for communities as we're seeing programs cut, programs that students need, that we need if we're going to have the skilled workforce that we need to drive this economy and make us more self-reliant, particularly in the face of Trump's tariff threats. So it's absolutely essential. We are funding at the lowest rate of any province in Canada right now. That is shameful. The answer isn't to increase tuitions. The answer is to properly fund post-secondary institutions. And I will add that the reliance on international students breaks my heart. A lot of those young people wanted to come here to build a life. They are part of our future, but we have to properly fund our post-secondary institutions.
All right, Marit Stiles, thank you. I'll turn to Doug Ford on the financial challenges facing many colleges.
Yeah, when they saw the financial challenges when the federal government cut foreign students, we jumped in there. We support them to a tune of $1.3 billion. We cut tuition the exact year we got elected. We cut it by 10%. We've never raised it. We're making sure that the students focus for jobs of the future. What we did find out, a couple of classes, David, had 4 or 5 people in it. And we thought that's ridiculous, you know, like a basket weaving course. Let's focus on STEM. We graduate more STEM students than anywhere in the entire North America, over 70,000 STEM students, science, technology, engineering, and math. Those are the jobs of the future. We're going to continue investing in it, not to mention the skilled trades. There's a reason why all the trade unions are supporting us. At one time used to support you, but they know there's no future with any of your parties. And we're spending over $2.5 billion training skilled workers. And we've seen women, a 30% increase with women in the skilled trades.
All right. Doug Ford, thank you. Bonnie Crombie.
I think it's so important to educate our kids and prepare them for the jobs of tomorrow. And we don't even know what those jobs will look like now that AI is here, and it will change a lot of things for us. But what I do know is Doug Ford has set up a Ponzi scheme for our universities and our colleges, that they're relying on foreign students because he never capped them. He never capped them as they should have. My plan would be to cap foreign students at 10% so our kids have more space and reliance. I'm also going to increase OSAP for our students and extend the amount of time that they have to pay it back and increase the threshold in which it kicks in when they have to pay it back. But let's fund our colleges and universities properly. They only currently get 30% of their operating funding from the province. Every other province gives them up to 60%, and they're forced to rely on endowments and their reserves. And of course, they're closing departments and laying off people, because this government has created a Ponzi scheme, and it is not sustainable, and we need to cap foreign students.
Bonnie Crombie, thank you. I'll turn finally on this to Mike Schreiner.
Yeah, David, we have to have an honest conversation with the people of Ontario. We have the lowest funding for post-secondary education of any province in the country. It would take an additional $5 billion in Ontario just to get to the provincial average. So what are the real-world implications of that? Colleges cutting programs to train people in the trades, train nurses, train people for vital jobs. I can tell you, as somebody who's started a number of businesses, I can't tell you how important it is to have our post-secondary education sector available to train the workers for my businesses and businesses across this province. Those programs are being cut. The $1.3 billion that was given to universities and colleges wasn't even enough to make up for the loss in funding from international students. We will not solve this crisis. We will not generate the trained workers we need for our economy if we don't fix this.
All right, Mike Schreiner, thanks very much. I'm going to turn back briefly to Doug Ford because I didn't catch it. Bonnie Crombie, evidently, you said his name, and that gives him a brief time to respond.
Well, first of all, just to inform Bonnie that it's the federal government, not the province, that cut the foreign students, just to inform you. But in saying that, we are training over 1 million students. Just think of this, Skills Development Fund, $2.5 billion. We've already seen 600,000 people go through the system in all areas, not just skilled trades, but other skills that they have out there.
All right,
we're going to continue investing in the people and the students of this province.
We're going to continue.
Like they've ever seen before, which we're doing.
We'll continue on this same subject, post-secondary education, as it faces huge financial challenges. We're now going to have two leaders facing off, one-on-one, for 2 minutes. We'll turn to Marit Stiles and Doug Ford for this. First word to you, Marit Stiles.
Well, I want to start with something that Doug said about the kids and the graduating rates. Like, we are seeing a lot of people graduating from STEM programs in universities and colleges, but I want to shift this a bit because I think that they're graduating in spite of this government and in spite of actually everything they've experienced coming up through our publicly funded education system in the last few years. And so I want to ask more specifically about that, because education is the reason that I first ran for public office. I think kids are our future, and I think the investments that we make now in our publicly funded education system are crucial to their success, but also to our success in Ontario. And so I want to ask Doug Ford why, after everything our children went through, everything they went through in the difficult years around the pandemic, why you cut $1,500 per student from our education system and drove education workers and teachers out of our schools.
Well, first of all, that's an inaccurate statement. I'm going to tell you what the facts are. I know, and the three of you aren't very good with numbers, but the fact is No one's ever invested more in education than we have. We've invested $40 billion in education. That's $10 billion more
Doug, you gotta
than
do the
the
math, my
NDP and the
friend.
Liberals when you prop them up.
Yeah,
you know
no.
something, we actually hired 9,000 more educators.
No, Doug.
Even though the population of students have been
Here's the
stagnant around
thing,
2
Doug,
million,
parents know that you're
9,000
not
more
telling the
educators.
truth about this.
As you two are closing 600 schools,
Doug,
we're building $16 billion of schools. As you were laying off teachers, we're hiring
So
more
I'd like to get back
more
in here, if I
teachers.
may, David.
That's the
Doug,
difference.
look,
The foundation of education is
parents with
built
kids in
on our
schools,
economy.
Parents with kids in our schools right now, they know that that's not true, okay? Classrooms, the class sizes are huge. We cannot find education assistants or teachers or other caring, qualified adults to work in our schools because you took them to court because you tried to freeze their wages. But you have actually reduced funding by $1,500 per student.
That is, I'll
more
have to stop us there just to keep
9,000
us
more.
on time here. The next debate's going to happen between Bonnie Crombie and Mike Schreiner. You have 2 minutes. First word to you, Mike Schreiner.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Crombie. As you know, our education system is hurting. Our post-secondary education system is so underfunded, and K-12 is underfunded.
Absolutely.
The Ontario Greens are the only party that's actually put forward a fully costed platform that shows how we can afford to reverse the $1,500 cut brought in by this government in K-12 education. We've shown how we can increase funding, base budget funding for our colleges and universities. Will the Liberals bring forward a costed platform so people have the transparency they need to make a decision in this election?
Thank you for the question, Mike. And yes, absolutely, we will bring in a costed platform. But you know what I also wanted to refer to is the unemployment rate amongst our youth. They come out of their skill training, whether skill training or colleges and universities, and then 17% are unemployed. They can't find jobs. So I'm going to create 40,000 jobs for them through apprenticeship programs and other programs through our companies, and we're going to get them back to work. That is my commitment to our young people, to create 40,000 new jobs to smash that unemployment rate in half. But you're quite right. Even in our elementary schools and our high schools, you know, they're overcrowded and the schools are crumbling. Teachers are forced to pay for supplies from their own pocket. You know, they don't even have children. Our youth don't even have a textbook, one per each child.
Mind if I ask just a follow-up? Sorry, don't mean to interrupt. But it's just, when are we going to see the costed platform? Because I think people, like, election day's a couple weeks away. People want to know that when we're all up here making promises, and these promises, they're like a sacred trust with people.
I agree.
And they want to know how you're going to pay for it.
Let's get an
The
answer.
Ontario
We've got 10
Greens have been
seconds.
honest
No, we
about
would
that.
absolutely have our platform released. And I would think every one of us on this stage should make that commitment, David. Why don't you ask each one of us whether they will release their platforms costed?
I'll give you the opportunity to do that because you will have in your closing statements the opportunity to do that. We have a lot of issues facing this province, and trying to narrow them down is a challenge. Housing, absolutely a big one. And so each of you will have 1 minute to answer in these questions. Bonnie Crombie, I'll start with you. Our home is our safe place, it's supposed to be. But for many renters, they face the threat of rent eviction or a landlord saying, I'm going to move in, really just as a way to get them out. On the flip side of the coin, you have many landlords who have tenants who don't pay. And the system takes months to be able to try to get them out. What is your fix for renting in Ontario?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So the fix is to fix the landlord and tenant board, because I hear it from both sides. I hear about the dem evictions and the rent evictions, and I hear from the landlords that they're not collecting rent either. So the system isn't fair. Adjudicators haven't been appointed. My pledge is to fix the backlog in the landlord and tenant board within the first 3 months. There are 53,000 cases outstanding. I'm not sure what has happened over the past 7 years, but certainly there are not adjudicators been appointed to clear that backlog. But listen, I've got 3 kids. They can barely afford their rent. They're not putting any money away to hopefully buy a home one day. 2 of them got married this summer, and they want to start a family. And there aren't homes being built in Ontario, and not ones that our young people can afford. Alberta, BC, Quebec, they're eating our lunch. They have figured out home building. We haven't here. So I'm making a commitment that I'm going to reduce the price of your home by removing those hidden taxes called development charges, but reducing the price by $170,000.
That is time.
Thank you.
We'll have to leave it there. Bonnie Crombie, Doug Ford, I will turn to you. What is your fix for renting in Ontario?
Oh, my goodness. When she's saying that she's going to get rid of development charges, all she did is increase taxes in Mississauga. And as I said before, Mayor Carolyn Parrish has done more in 10 months, getting rid of the development charges, at least 50%, more incentives than you have in 10 years, Bonnie. Isn't it amazing when you have new leadership in Mississauga, their taxes are going to be under control right now? But we led the charge across the country in getting rid of the HST for purpose-built rentals. Now we have a record amount of purpose-built rentals. We're putting over $2 billion into infrastructure, the water, the sewers, the pipes that are needed, and that's going right across the province that will be able to build an additional 1 million homes. That's what these communities want. They want infrastructure, but guess what? None of this can happen under their 3 watches, because I'll tell you, the economy would go down quicker than the Canadian bobsled downhill. And we're the only ones that have the economy moving. We'll continue to have the economy moving to generate more income.
Doug
to
Ford,
build
I'll leave
homes.
it there with you. Thank you very much, Bonnie Crombie. You heard your name being said by Doug Ford. You get 30
over and
seconds
over
to
again. You know,
respond.
it's really funny because Doug Ford stood in the legislature and heaped praise on me and on my record and said what a fantastic job creator I was and how the economy was booming in Mississauga and that I had kept all my promises as mayor. And we've got that going out viral because I just want to remind him that, you know, he may think differently today, but back when I was mayor, he thought I was doing a pretty incredible job.
Yeah,
and I wanted to mention is
Bonnie Crombie's time. Please go ahead. Yeah. You have 5 more seconds.
I have 5 more, sorry. I wanted to add as well that we would phase in rent controls over a period of time. I think that would be really helpful to people who can't afford their rent today. And while we make it more affordable to buy a home, our kids are losing the dream of buying a home. Some of them even want to leave the province.
Bonnie Crombie, thank you very much. I've got to turn now to Mike Schreiner. A reminder, the question is, what is your fix for renting in Ontario?
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to my colleague, Ashlyn Clancy, MPP for Kitchener Centre, who put forward the most comprehensive bill in Ontario to protect renters, bringing back rent control, restrictions around above guideline rent increases, restrictions against rent evictions, because we need to protect renters in this province. Ways to fix the landlord-tenant board that works for landlords and for tenants. David, we have a whole generation, my daughter's generation, saying, we're never going to be able to afford a home, let alone pay the rent. That's exactly why the Ontario Greens have committed to building 2 million homes and removing the restrictions to build missing middle houses, 6 to 11-story multi-residential buildings in large urban centers. But unfortunately, the government said no to that bill, like they said no to my bill to build more homes that you can afford in the communities you know and love. We have to start getting back to building. We need a government that will say yes.
All right, that's time. Mike Schreiner, thank you very much. You said Doug Ford's name.
I don't think I did.
No, I don't think you did.
Well, let's pretend
You said
he
the
did.
government. Excuse me, you said the government. The voices in my head are telling me that.
Well, just, you know something, we've hired more adjudicators and landlord-tenant board. It's actually, the numbers are actually going down now. We're going to make sure we have some of the toughest laws to protect tenants. But as you were saying, Dave, some people abuse that and they stay in there for a year. We're going to make sure we clear up the backlog. But what this comes down to is they believe in higher taxes, new taxes, any taxes. That's what they believe in. And you've proved it. You voted against us every single time. I don't believe in taxing the people.
That is time. We're running short on the clock. Marit Stiles, fix for renting in Ontario.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, first of all, these two, once again, fighting over who builds the least housing in the middle of a housing crisis. Go figure. But look, Doug Ford has talked a lot, a good game about housing, but where is the housing, Doug? Where is it? Not being built. And we know, as I mentioned previously in this debate, that rent is up on average of 38% since 2018 when his government came to power. We have generations of people in this province who are never going to be able to imagine owning a home under this government. I want to tell you, though, about a woman named Lynn, 64 years old. I met her in Ottawa. She lost her home. She was renting. When she went into the hospital for some issues, she came out. Rent was through the roof. Couldn't afford it. Bad luck. Ends up in living out of her car for 8 weeks before she get into a shelter. She said to me, please raise this issue with Doug Ford. Please tell him, never in a million years would I've imagined myself here. The answer to what Lynn needs is rent control and it is truly affordable homes. The NDP is the only party that is actually committed to real rent control and building truly permanently affordable housing.
Marit Stiles, thank you. Doug Ford, you get 30 more seconds. Your name was mentioned.
Well, we believe in making sure that we continue building more and more. And you know what it is, Marit? All you have to do is look outside the door. There's more cranes, and I want to do more, believe me, because I understand there's more cranes going up in Toronto, right in your own backyard, than in New York and Chicago, Dallas, San Francisco, Seattle, and a few other cities combined. So they're being built up. But do you know what we need to do? We need to cut the red tape. We need to get rid of the development charges and all the fees, the parks fees, that fees.
Okay,
and
that is
again,
time.
I just believe is making sure you put money
I'll just
back
have to
in the
cut you
business.
off there because we're moving to an open debate on housing. Doug Ford going to begin here. The rest of you can jump in as you see fit. Plenty of talk about building new homes. The challenge is many developers not really doing all that much building. Doug Ford, how would you change that?
Well, first of all, you have to have people that can afford a home, and how you do that is by employing people, not taxing them to death.
I'm going to continue.
But that's right. We have more people unemployed today than we've had in a
believe in
decade.
taxing people to death. Under your watch, 300,000 jobs are lost
Doug, you've got-
immediately.
Come on. David, I'm gonna jump
850,000
in here.
people
Jump
in.
have a bigger job and a better
Mr. Ford has said,
paycheck,
Mr. Ford has said
you know?
we're raising taxes on housing. He's absolutely wrong. Our first-time home buyers
taxes
plan
on everyone.
would lower
Okay.
taxes and
I'm just
fees
gonna
so
jump in
you
here.
can afford
We're
a
getting
home
into a
in the
noise area.
community you know and love.
We'll shut this down.
Let's be
We're going to
honest
shut
here.
it down.
Let's be honest.
Shutting it down to move on to our next subject, and that is climate. Given the time frame we're up against, we have 30 seconds on that. Mike Schreiner, I start with you. It would appear that the federal carbon tax, as it currently exists, is going to disappear. How do you reduce emissions quickly?
Addressing climate starts with protecting the people and places we love in this province. We have to protect Ontario from Mr. Ford's attack on our farmlands, our wetlands, and our Greenbelt. We need to ensure that we protect the nature that protects us from these unsafe weather events caused by the burning of fossil fuels. We need to stop the government from ramping up fossil gas plants, which will increase electricity prices and pollution, and we need to stop subsidizing big oil and gas companies.
All right, Mike Schreiner, thank you. Marit Stiles.
Well, I mean, first of all, yeah, we absolutely have to protect our farmland. You saw under Doug Ford, he wanted to carve up one of the most important carbon sinks that we have in this province, the Greenbelt. And that's what Doug Ford will do. Every time he says one thing in front of the camera and another thing behind closed doors, you can't trust him on this. And with somebody, making some big changes in the South, where we're going to have to step up as a province, I think, in a bigger way to promote climate action. I just want to say thank you to all of those young people who are fighting so hard for climate action in the province of Ontario.
Okay, that
today.
is time. I'll turn to Doug Ford.
Do you know what killed more jobs than anything? Is the carbon tax. The queen of the carbon tax, Bonnie Crombie, she believes in the carbon tax. And my other two colleagues here, they love the carbon tax. And it just doesn't cut it. We have the greatest reduction of emissions anywhere. We're at 90% clean energy, one of the cleanest grids in the entire world. And do you know how we did it? We invested. We invested with Dofasco and Algoma, putting electric arc furnaces in. That's like taking 2 million cars off the road. We're building the Ontario line. That's taking 28,000 cars off the road.
Okay, I'll have to jump in on you, Doug Ford and Bonnie Crombie.
Unfortunately, Doug, you don't get the plight of real people because you were raised privileged with a silver spoon in your mouth. You didn't have to work for anything. You got a company handed to you, Doug, so you don't understand how expensive things are today. I bet you couldn't tell me what the cost of eggs are. I am the first Liberal to stand up and say it's too expensive to have a consumer carbon tax. I was the first Liberal to say there will be no tax on consumers. There will be no carbon tax, Doug. I have said that repeatedly, but you just like your friend Donald Trump make things up. You are saying lies.
That is time. Thank you. We'll continue moving on.
If you were to have the leaders over for dinner to your house, what would you make them exactly?
Simple things like a soup, because we show them that there is no money so we can buy the groceries.
Hamburgers, fries, sausages, and the best French fries in the city.
I don't cook, my partner would do it. And it would be pasta.
We start with some cocktails, some wine, and maybe some pasta, and maybe food of the poor, so they realize what people really need in Ontario.
Oxtail.
Why?
I mean, being in Canada, Toronto, it's you know, lots of culture to share, lots of different perspectives and viewpoints, and that's part of being Canadian you love is sharing your difference in cultures.
That's what some Ontarians told us they would prepare for these leaders. So as we try to have a bit of a lighter moment here, if you had the other leaders over for dinner, what would you make? 15 seconds, Marit Stiles.
Boiled dinner from back home in Newfoundland. Very, very inexpensive. Cabbage, salt, meat, potatoes, something a lot of us could probably relate to. Delicious, and I make a really good one.
Marit Stiles, thank you. Doug Ford.
Macaroni and cheese.
All right, very simple. We'll turn to Mike Schreiner.
I love making homemade pizza with all Ontario ingredients, which is why we need to protect Ontario's farmland.
Nice.
Bonnie Crombie.
So I'm Polish, as you know, and I grew up with my grandparents in a rooming house, and I learned to cook under my grandmother's wing. And so, of course, you're going to get pierogies in cabbage rolls, and you're going to get borscht, beet soup, and you're going to get all kinds of Polish delicacies, because that's what I love to cook, and I thank my babcia for teaching me.
Bonnie Crombie, thank you. Okay, we have time left for each of you to make a closing statement. That is one uninterrupted moment, and we will start with PC Leader Doug Ford.
Well, folks, we're going to have a very clear choice in this upcoming election. This is all about leadership. We've seen what Donald Trump is going to do in the White House for the next 4 years. And no matter if he puts a tariff on us today, tomorrow, next month, next year, you know, it would devastate our economy. There's one person on that stage that's going to protect your families, protect jobs, and protect businesses and protect communities. And that's myself. We're going to reinvest into the economy like we did, and we saw over 850,000 jobs. We're going to diversify trade around the world, which we did. We saw over $70 billion of investment. But I can't do it without a strong mandate. If I get a strong mandate from the people of Ontario, I will work harder than I've ever worked. I will fight against Donald Trump like you've never seen before. On February 27th, I'm asking for your vote, and may God bless the people of Ontario.
Doug Ford, thank you very much. We'll turn now to Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie.
We need a premier that will protect everyone's job, not just his own, and who is able to get us a family doctor like they had promised. You know, tonight we talked a lot about some really important issues, no question. And I want to leave you with this. If we want to change our healthcare system and a family doctor, you need to change the government. So today I'm asking those of you who voted NDP in the last election to vote Liberal, to vote for a government that will fix our healthcare system and to get you a family doctor. And together, we can change government. Thank you.
All right, we'll turn now to the NDP's Marit Stiles.
When times are tough, people look for hope. And for me, I find that hope in the strength of the people that I meet all across the province of Ontario. But after 7 long years of Doug Ford and his wasteful scandals and his broken promises, rising costs are really hurting a lot of people in this province, and they are weakening us. He has left us weaker than ever before. A few weeks ago, while he was facing, and we were facing, the biggest threat that our country has faced in generations, he decided to quit his job. Now, most people in Ontario, if you quit your job and then you didn't show up for work the next day, you wouldn't expect to be rehired. But Doug thinks that he deserves that. I got to tell you, you don't have to settle for this. You have the power to change things. And I want to offer you that hope. We can fix our schools. We can build truly affordable, permanently affordable homes. We can hire doctors and fix the healthcare crisis that these folks have contributed to. And we can bring new leadership and new ideas to Ontario. It's time for change.
All right, we will turn now to the Green Party leader, Mike Schreiner.
I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in tonight. My commitment to you is that I will fight to put you and your community first. I will fight for fairness. Right now, in Doug Ford's Ontario, the rich insiders are getting richer, and the rest of us are just struggling to get by. You have to ask yourself if it's any better now than it was 7 years ago. And it's clear when it comes to housing, healthcare, education, climate action, affordability, the answer is no. What separates Greens from every party up here is that we're running local champions who will be your voice at Queen's Park, not the leader's voice in your riding. I tell my deputy leaders, Matt Richter and Perry Salmuskoka and Ashland Clancy in Kitchener Centre, that I'm not your boss. The people of your riding are your boss. And we need more of that in Ontario. And that's what the Ontario Greens will deliver as we fight for fairness.
All right, Mike Schreiner, thank you. And as we wrap ourselves up tonight for this, the 2025 Ontario Leaders Debate, I would like to thank certainly all 4 leaders who are on this stage with me tonight and thank them for joining us on this family day. PC leader Doug Ford, Green Party leader Mike Schreiner. We also have the NDP's Marit Stiles and Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie. Thank you all for those watching and listening, for engaging in your future. As we know, Election Day just 10 days away. It'll happen on Thursday, February 27th. I'm David Common. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you to everybody here, and have a great night.
Thank you.